Well, good morning, everyone. I think we can get started. First of all, thank you again for joining. This is the fifth of the series from the Transformational Change Learning Partnership working sessions. And today we will focus on a document that's called Catalyzing Transformational Climate Finance for Adaptation and Resilience. Today we will have Nasiba Shamor leading this discussion. Nasiba is an internationalist collaborating for 14 years in climate actions with experience in negotiation, innovative financial mechanisms, project design, policymaking, local empowerment, facilitation, and monitoring and evaluation. She currently co-leads the facilitation team of the Climate Investment Fund's Transformational Change Learning Partnership, working on knowledge dissemination for climate action in particular. With her background at Mexico's National Forestry Commission, CONAFOR, she helped develop community forest enterprises and innovative financing mechanisms. Nasiba's involvement with the Climate Investment Funds demonstrates her expertise in climate finance and transformational change. She holds a master's in development studies from the Institute of Development Studies at the University of Sussex and a bachelor's in international economic relations from the Autonomous University of the State of Mexico. Without further ado, and considering time, Nasiba, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Alfredo. Hi, everyone. Welcome. As Alfredo said, my name is Nasiba Shamor, and I am a lead facilitator with the Transformational Change Learning Partnership. And today we are very happy to share a piece of work that we have been developing for the past months, which is focused on understanding the intersections between transformational change and resilience and adaptation financing. Can we go to the next slide, please? So we will send the scoping study for everyone to read, but in the meantime, I'm going to do my best to give an overview of the findings in a limited time, and then we will have the rest of the hour to discuss and to hear from you. As I said before, the objective of this scoping study is to understand which elements in financing resilience and adaptation initiatives can result in transformational intent and impact eventually. Also, we looked into mechanisms and approaches that show innovation and also into the actors moving this knowledge forward. Finally, we also wanted to explore what type of support the CIF can provide to advance transformational change in resilience and adaptation initiatives. Next slide, please. So the methodology that we used for the scoping study was centered around gathering evidence. And for this, we carried out a series of interviews with key experts in the field of adaptation, resilience, and finance, or the combination of the three. And we also did a literature review to understand how the current discussion is evolving and also to figure out the gaps. Next slide. I'm going to go really fast through this one to get to the good ones. So you'll see on screen the structure of how we designed the study. We wanted to understand not only the enabling, sometimes disabling environment for transformational climate finance for resilience and adaptation, but also what are the concepts and frameworks that help us understand the success of these initiatives. So in this presentation, I am going to focus more on sections 4 and 7, the approaches and the recommendations, because we want to test with all of you and hear from you about, what do you think about the approach to the mechanism, the future opportunities for the CIF and the TCLP to collaborate. Next slide. Some of you have seen a version of this slide before. I'm not going to stop a lot here, but there is a broad recognition for the need to scale up the finance for resilience and adaptation, and also to make it more transformational to achieve results that are sustainable at the long term. So finance for resilience and adaptation usually lags behind compared to finance for mitigation. We all know this, and there are some historical barriers for that. The biggest financial resources come as grants, often from the public sector, and this creates debt burdens that constrain future resource access. Also, there are some global agreements in place that mandate finance flows for resilience and adaptation, but somehow at the operational level, some of the gears are missing for national and multilateral entities to collaborate in an effective way. As you will see, this scoping study is designed to invite some creative thinking on how do we use the limited resources that we have in a smart way that can bring about transformational results, and how to truly get the most of, for example, concessional or private funding and other fundings. Next slide, please. So the first thing that we learned in the research that was needed was to conceptualize. First, definitions around adaptation and resilience, then transformational climate finance, and eventually transformational adaptation and resilience. And these to understand all its intersections and possibilities. This, of course, is a work in progress. The definitions that you see on the slides, these are live definitions, but we suggested a couple of concepts to set a foundation for the document and for the next sections of the scoping study. The other need that systematically came from the interviews was a taxonomy for resilience and adaptation. So in our research, we gathered some examples to categorize climate finance, like the ones that you see here, like the Climate Bonds Initiative that is focused on capital markets. The one it's supported by the Gates Foundation that looks into measuring private and corporate funding. Another one by the Lightsmith Group with support from the IDB that focus on providing finance access to small and medium enterprises. So these are some, and we definitely want to hear from you. If you are aware of other types of taxonomies or interesting lenses to organize resilience and adaptation finance, please let us know in the chat or later raise your hand in the discussion. Next slide, please. So through our literature review and our interviews with experts, we learned about a lot of emerging mechanisms and examples of innovative finance for adaptation and resilience that definitely hold some transformational elements in them. So when we were organizing them, we tried different approaches to make better sense of them, and we want to test some of these different lenses with you and see if they are appropriate, if they are useful, not only for your work, but also for your learning purposes. So first was the geographical lens. We organized initiatives by level, national, subnational, regional. And we learned a couple of interesting things. We learned that most sources of concessional finance, for example, are drawn to particular scopes like the national, right? Because, it makes sense to work with national governments. But for example, the subnational level initiative seems to have a particular transformational impact, and this is not a surprise. They have a better uptake at the long term of the lessons learned because they operate with stakeholders on the ground that are immersed in the local dynamics. There is also some might call it resistance or inexperience to work with multi-country finance for adaptation, but there are out there some promising experiences that are emerging on this area, like the Zambezi Watercourse Initiative. This is an initiative of the CEF under its Nature, People, and Climate program. One recurrent statement that we heard in the research is that tools like the programmatic approach are going to be relevant, yes, but only if they align to the priorities and the development plans and the climate action strategies of the country or the region that they are targeting. Next slide. So public funding will always have a very special place, especially in programs that target vulnerable population. But as we know, private finance can help with investments that are considered risky. It can mobilize big resources, and it can do it with the agility and the speed that is needed. The format of financial intermediaries, for example, with financial instruments like microloans, have the capacity to deploy resources to people who are not the usual beneficiaries for bigger banks. and for a fraction of the paperwork needed. Another interesting example is aggregation platforms that can help smaller producers bundle up their assets to minimize their transaction costs. They help them have access to bigger pools of funding or distribute the risk. Also in the interviews, some experts highlighted the importance of small and medium enterprises and how overlooked they are in the bigger climate finance architecture. So initiatives like the Adaptation Benefits Mechanism from the African Development Bank can respond to this need. It is results-based and it targets small businesses and vulnerable populations and help deliver adaptation benefits through their operation. So we gathered a lot more examples that you're going to be able to see in the paper, but I just thought of sharing some. Next slide, please. Another lens that we tested is the idea that to achieve transformational climate adaptation and resilience, we need to scale up financing for a sort of like the broader sustainable development needs. And this includes funding for social protection programs that enhance climate resilience, for example, or integrate gender perspective in climate finance initiatives, or investing in projects that have a particular focus on climate resilience infrastructure. Essentially, climate adaptation and resilience finance, we learned that, we know this, it has to evolve to create some fundamental changes in the systems and structures that are in place. Next slide, please. Right, so channeling resources into nature-based solutions is considered a game changer. It's about recognizing the role of nature in achieving climate resilience and sustainable development. And in the study, we explore some mechanisms that incorporate nature-based solutions in climate, like debt for nature swaps or financing instruments for climate and disaster risks, microloans for microcredits, nature-based insurance, and also financing technology innovation. Also very innovative, we heard about like the different uses of bonds, blue bonds for ocean conservation, then resilience bonds for forest restoration, municipal bonds and green bonds also for resilience infrastructure. And also we heard about the different combination of resources like multi-investor funds or public-private partnerships for urban resilience. Next slide, please. Another lens we explored is capital markets. And recently, new funds have emerged that are partnering philanthropic and multilateral organizations, and they are supporting the scaling up of investments, like some private equity funds that are focused on climate resilience and adaptation. Some organizations have identified that climate resilience is a growing market, and it brings new opportunities to bridge the gap on climate finance. There are funds supporting startups that are focused on fintech for climate resilience, for example. Other initiatives use grants or equity or debt as a way to de-risk investments. And in turn, they make them more attractive to non-concessional finance. And some of these examples even have sub-products that are very useful, like toolkits that measure adaptation and resilience impact in investment projects. Next slide. So we interviewed around 18 experts from 10 organizations for this scoping study. And these organizations have a commitment to advance adaptation and resilience strategies and are potential partners and lead thinkers for future research. And they also let us in on who do they think could also be interesting to connect with moving forward. So this slide is not comprehensive at all. It's just a visual reminder of the power of the network and the possibilities that we have if we make use of the Transformational Change Learning Partnership to create some useful knowledge products and knowledge material, just to keep in mind. Next slide, please. Right, so there are some challenges to investing in climate resilience and adaptation at scale that we identified through the research. I'm going to go really fast through these ones. I mean, investors are hesitant to fund risky, small-scale projects, and we need more funds to experiment without all the red tape. As I mentioned earlier, there's no clear understanding of what resilience and adaptation really mean. So this makes it tough to attract investment. We need to work on solid definitions and framework, which is one of the objectives of this scoping study. We heard also often that the climate finance architecture is undefined and not cohesive. And a lot of focus is needed for better coordination and collaboration between different funds and organizations, in particular, if we want to have global agreements like the SDGs and the Paris Agreement up and running. Countries, especially at local levels, don't have the capacity for manage and plan for climate adaptation. So some financial management and planning skills are needed. It is also hard to measure the impact for adaptation projects. So a key component is clear indicators and results that can be measured to show that these projects are working. Next slide, please. Right. Now let's talk about some recommendations based on the findings of the study. These are really ideas for the CIF to dive into new research to push forward transformative climate adaptation and resilience finance, and also potential collaborations with the TCLP. So we need to look into how effective concessional finance funds are in attracting private investment. There are a lot of these funds out there, but are they really getting private money flowing into resilience projects? And that's something that we have to figure out. Secondly, partner with private sector funds to see where their money is going. Are these investments actually helping vulnerable communities? It's crucial to ensure that these investments are making a real difference on the ground. Then there's the issue of getting more climate finance directly to local communities. We've got some great initiatives, but we need to see if they are really reaching the people who need them the most. This is an opportunity to focus on keeping the money flowing to where it's most needed. Also, an interesting activity to do is more case studies in specific countries or regions to understand how well these funding platforms are working locally, in particular related to our concepts of adaptation, resilience, transformational change in finance. Are they listening to the local needs and making a real impact? And we think that this study will give us some insights. And lastly, work on a framework to evaluate different solutions for climate resilience. We want to know which approaches work best in different situations, and this could guide us in making smarter decisions or investments for the future. These are some emerging areas where the CIF can lead some research to drive real progress in transformational resilience and adaptation finance. It's just about making sure that the resources go where they are needed most and they truly make a difference. Okay, I'm going to stop here because for the next slide, we want to hear from you. We want to hear what resonated with you, how useful you found this information. Again, you will read the scoping study very soon. We want to test the lenses that we use for the approaches and for the mechanisms. And we also want to hear from you about some other mechanisms, some innovative, financing tools that that we don't. So I'm going to hand it over to Tim to manage some questions that you may have and also the discussion. Thank you so much.